Yo, what's up, eBik theorists? I'm here, I'm queer, and I'm back, explaining to you why Mr. Birling did nothing wrong in An Inspector Calls. If you didn't know, An Inspector Calls is written by J.B. Priestley, released in 1945 and set in 1912, and is literally just promoting socialism. The first character we're introduced to, and the one I'll be focusing on this episode, is Mr. Birling. In his long speech about whatever he was talking about, he says two things that make him look like a fool. First, it's the Germans don't want war. Of course, since this was published in 1945, both the Great War and World War II had already ended. However, he's most likely referring to the Great War. But if you're a history master like I am, you'll know that the Great War didn't start because of Germany. It was because Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria was assassinated. So yeah, he's right. The Germans didn't want war. Moreover, nobody, not even the world leaders, politicians, literally nobody, had really expected a war the scale of the Great War. So, the Germans didn't want war isn't ignorance. It's optimism. Next, he states that the Titanic is unsinkable, absolutely unsinkable, which is kind of ridiculous that Priestley is placing the disaster of the Titanic upon capitalism, and because Arthur is a capitalist, it makes socialism better. This doesn't make sense for two reasons. Number one, almost everyone thought the Titanic was unsinkable, capitalists and socialists alike. Number two, most boats didn't even sink back then, and still don't now, and one of that scale hadn't existed until then, and though it may be foolish for people to think it was unsinkable, it isn't a capitalist fault. But now we're moving on to the real focus of this video, guys. Eva Smith. She and a small group of women were asking for their rates to be increased from 22 and 6 up to 25 shillings a week, which, as Mr. Birling said, was how much the average pay was. What he also said is that several hundred women were working for him, and they'd just been on holiday. Do you know how much extra money they have to pay to increase their salaries if everyone followed suit asking for a raise? Well, assuming he had 500 women working for him, which is probably less than he actually had considering that is lower than what the average was back then, he'd have to pay a lot more money. Prior to decimal day in 1971, there were 240 pence in £1 and 12 pence in a shilling. If we convert their pay into pence, we get 270p. The pay they wanted would be 300p. An increase of 30p doesn't sound much, but remember, he had hundreds of women working for him. 30p for 500 women would be 15,000 pence extra every week, or £7,800 a year. Do you want to know how much that'd be in 2018? £383,522. Do you really think he had that much money? He'd go bankrupt and wouldn't even be able to pay the women anyway. What you need to remember is, Mr. Birling owes money everything. Literally. It bought him everything, and he worked his way up to the top and values money more than everything. Almost everything. Mr. Birling isn't the enemy in An Inspector Calls. But that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching, and as always, thanks for watching.